Okay, hopefully this will stay in the whole time. Yeah. So I want to talk about Will Smith coming out. Will Smith is in Miami. He's coming out of this like art gala or whatever, and he is accompanied by just a bald woman. People are saying she looks like Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, I just want to talk about why this is positive and normal. um Whatever feelings we might have and whatever nostalgia as the public we might have about Will and Jada Pinkett Smith in a relationship and their family, the fact is their relationship is over. It's in the past. They have, it seems like they have a very cordial friendship now, which is good. They are not married any longer, though. Their marriage, they are separated, okay, and it looks like Will Smith has moved on. And I think that this is such a positive thing. Like, this is so important for him and her. Like, they both need to move on into either just being single, which the other thing about that's so strange, and I feel like people can't seem to understand this conceptually. If you are not married to another person, you are single, or you could be in a committed relationship with someone else. But otherwise, it's a very normal thing to just date and see other people, okay? Have dinner with other people, go out with other people from the other sex. Like, eventually that will happen. So, this is like a very natural, normal part of life for Will Smith. So him doing a very normal thing with a very like normal girl out, okay, normalize that, okay, make some really serious pop culture moments about that, because I feel like for some reason the black community is trying to normalize Blueface and Krishan as being a normal couple, and they are anything but normal. Like, the things that they are doing and promoting are so profound that like I don't even hear about them. Nobody where I am, there are probably some people, like a very few black people who know who these people are, but I gotta tell you, like 90% of the people where I am do not know who Blueface or Krishan are. And their cultural things and monuments that they're doing are completely like looked down upon. They would be what this community would call white trash, but they're black. Like, all the shit that they're doing, it's not really new. People have been doing this in white America too. They separate them from society. They like they go live on like in Appalachia. You know how people always talk about the white people always talk about that place. That where we grew up in Appalachia. That's where the white people like that. That's where they go. There are a lot of country songs about white people who are white trash. And that's what Krishan and Blueface are, like the black trash version. But they've become so popular, they've like monetized the counterculture. Now the weird part is there just aren't that many examples of the normal culture in relation to like people who are black. So like, so Will Smith doing something as simple as like going to an art gallery with a woman, a new woman who he's dating, needs to be talked about as something that's normal, because you see how it's like not problematic. They're both just like walking around in like jeans and a t-shirt. It looks like she had some sandals on. That's what happened. That's how it looked. Like, they both look really normal. He's like smiling, like nobody has on any like extravagant like labels or anything. They're just like outside. So I just wanted to highlight that. But I also wanted to talk about something else I thought was interesting. For some reason, I've come across this like diversity of thought of men. Now, the first man who I want to I actually made a video about this. It was called my thirst trap video that I made in like 2021. I think it was like the first video I ever edited. I was so proud. Um and it was basically about me just listing off guys who I thought were like attractive, and I tried to do it where there were like no white guys. If I had to make that same list today, like probably none of those guys would be on the list. Probably like none of them would be on the list. I could make a whole new list, and maybe I will make a 2023 version of this list. There are some pretty hotties. And I do want to talk about it. Anyway, so now the interesting thing about the guy, I guess I'm thinking about YouTubers right now, people who have like actual personalities, so they're not just pictures where you can, talk about them a little more. The reason I want to talk about this is because like some people, I didn't really think that many people were gonna watch that Jason Lee video. I feel like 200 of you guys watched that, and to me that's even surprising. Someone made a comment and they were like, yeah, Beyonce made a whole movie, Renaissance, that was about black gay culture. Now, I wanted to talk about this too, but I didn't want to overemphasize it. Like, Renaissance did have a very large component of the movie that was based in like gay culture, all these things about like her Uncle Johnny. They had a group, the dolls that were in it, and she was like highlighting them. But she also had like the dance instructor. I'm not sure if the dance instructor was a member of the LGBTQ community. I don't know, but it felt like there was a whole story there to like her being the dance captain and all the things about like getting the dancers into formation or whatever, getting them all ready, getting Blue Ivy ready. There was all those things that happened, and that just had nothing to do with like gayness. So the whole movie definitely was not about. It wasn't a documentary about gay culture. It was a documentary about Beyonce's process of making the tour and the Renaissance album, which was definitely heavily inspired by house music. But I don't think like there are a lot of writers on the album, and the album was not. It was inspired by house music, but it wasn't like about house music. So like the album was about Beyonce being in a mood, okay, and basically being in a place where she's very comfortable with herself. That is not specific to gay people or house culture. So they did not make up being comfortable in your own skin. Um but moving forward though, I think it's like useful to unpack the different character types of these like black males that we're seeing, not only on the internet. Like I like pointing out content creators like Herbie Revelis, right? Who's like an out gay black male and all of the flamboyancy that he demonstrates. I went to art school with people who are very similar to him. I think it's useful and important to understand that there are people like him in society, but not all black. He doesn't represent all black men. He also doesn't represent all black gay men. I think there's a very large difference between, say, like a Jason Lee and a Herbie Revelis. I think that those two gay men are very, very, very different. I think their politics are very different. And I think the way that they represent themselves are very different. And I think it's important to know that. This is why it's important to have like a very like it's important for everyone to kind of walk through the world as they are, so that you can compare and contrast things like that. Because I feel like right now so many people are talking about things on the surface level. They're just saying like black people, black, 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 black. It's like the people who are still the South Africans are having arguments with themselves about being South African on a channel from a person who's living in America. Like the idiocy, like I don't, and I feel like they're all kind of making my point, right? Which is like, if you're so pro South African coloredness and anti-black or whatnot, why the fuck are you here? And why do you keep coming into black spaces? This is not black Americans going into South Africa and being like, let me introduce and push my culture on you because I don't like you. Like, that wouldn't make much sense now, would it? That's how y'all sound, but I digress. Moving on. So I wanted to give a few examples, which I'll link. I'll link some videos in their description box. But I guess first black guy I want to talk about is Bakari Sellers. Like a lot of people, and they get to know me a little bit more, they always ask about like if I were to date a black guy, like what would be my type. Bakari Sellers. Bakari Sellers. I feel like I made some other content about him, but he's great. He's written books. He was like a senator. He's super hot. He's very attractive. Very good looking man. Very tall. He's like a tall black version of Michael Knowles a little bit. Except he also like listens to hip hop music, or like he's familiar with black culture. Yeah, he's pretty conservative and from the South. He's very sexy. Okay, yeah. So him. I think I made some other content about him. You should watch that. I'll put a video where you can just watch Bakari do something. So he's great, right? Very different from say another guy. I saw a guy Phil Kofer. He's on YouTube now making content. I guess he's like coming out more as like a Christian, and it feels like he's doing a lot of like I don't know how do you say it, like self discovery on the YouTube journey. And I guess he's moved to Atlanta. Awful idea. If you're black and trying to find yourself, do not try to find yourself in Atlanta. You're gonna like lose yourself more than you'll find yourself in Atlanta. So many reasons for that. Anyway, and but I think it's interesting just to look at his archetype. I feel like at one point he was like a sports player or something, and now he's just a YouTuber. So that's cool. Maybe like listen to things that he has to say. That's like a different, right? So he's like like straight Christian, but also not Bakari Sellers. He's not into politics or anything. He was actually into sports. We can compare that to like a Will Smith. Okay, like one thing that's very interesting about Will Smith, and I'm not positive about this, but I feel like pretty much his entire career, he's been pretty like family oriented. He's been pretty value driven. But I would say not so much as like a Denzel Washington, who's like very Christian, like extremely value driven. But I would say they're kind of similar in terms of like their work ethic and how, how serious they take their work and craft and things like that. So that's interesting just to understand. And then you could compare that to maybe, hmm, well, I was gonna say a Steve Harvey, but I don't actually know. Like, I've never met anyone like Steve Harvey in real life. There's no like, I don't know. I just didn't grow up around those type of black people, or maybe I did, but I just avoided them like the plague. So I couldn't give you any like notable characteristics about them. It just feels like his entire brand is like talking, how do you say it, decoding bullshit from niggers to like normal women so that you don't fall into the trap of bullshit. So yeah, there was a need for someone to do that, and he picked up the ball. So I would say though, just like given what I've seen in the world and what I know now, it probably feels like it would be much smarter to just like avoid that in the first place, and then you just wouldn't have those problems, right? If you just avoided that, if you avoided them, you wouldn't have to understand the language because it doesn't make any sense anyway. Anyway, so where else was I going? I had other points. Um who else did I want to include in this like compare and contrast? I don't know. I can't really think of anyone else right now. But I guess the point is this. Like, I do feel like people continue to talk about. Oh, I wanted to talk about those twins. Those, like, fat twins who are, like, on the. I don't know what their names are, but they're, like, the twins or something. The conservative twins. I think that's what they're called. I've seen a couple of their videos, and all I could think was, like, damn, like, there are people like this in the world. And the one thing I've noticed from traveling around, traveling internationally, traveling nationally, kind of interacting with a lot of different cultures, so I call it cross cultural communication. And when you grow up in a place like New York, I would say is probably where it's like the most. You have the most exposure in New York because there's more money, it's faster, there's just way more microcultures, there's more languages, there's more economies, there's just more of everything. I feel like San Francisco is like a smaller version of that. And then LA is like an even smaller, different version of that. But Miami, I would say then is like maybe a couple tiers lower, but kind of that too. But the big idea here is like there is not just one culture. There's like a multitude of cultures in that space. And so you could never talk about things in terms of just like black and white, up and down. Like things are not simple. Things are like really intersectionality is kind of like the norm that you'd have to start talking about things like the bodega is a real part of life, but also like the Jamaican store on the corner is, and you know what I mean. Like things are international. Like global citizenship is a thing. There's other places like wherever these conservative twins are from, like globalism is not a thing. Like they are what you would call like the country biscuit or something, the country muffin, the dud. Like I remember before I moved to the South, I had a term and I it was so derogatory, but I forgot the way that I talked about it. But it was like, yeah, I think I called everybody like a country biscuit or some shit like that. Because they're so simple and they really are. Like they just don't know. They know so little about so little. Just imagine if like Taylor Swift was like the only artist that you've ever heard in your whole life. That's how it really is for like a lot of people here. Like they just only know that story. There is nothing else. I mean, it doesn't clearly like there isn't like need to be, but those of us who live in the real world, it's like, damn, like there's like a lot of other artists. It's kind of like extra shocking if like that's the only artist that you've ever heard. There's a lot of people who are like that. Like a lot. Okay. So that makes it like striking and shocking enough for me to be like saying it and having to give time to it because it's like, damn, that's kind of like sad a little bit. Anyway, so the big idea is that there are these black guys from all over the world, all over the internet, and so when someone made that comment that's like, oh, us gays, you know, you guys, they keep talking in these like monoliths. Like black people aren't a monolith. Black women aren't a monolith. I don't know. I heard Kelly Stamp saying this yesterday, but she said I don't fall neatly into any category. I've always been an outcast in every space that I was in. I think YouTube could probably show you how factual that is for so many of us. A lot of us don't fit neatly into any box. We actually have this like new genre, right? It's called the genre of music is called alternative pop or emo, right? And emo is like Haley Williams doing that podcast, like everything is emo. I feel like if you haven't heard that, you should go listen to that because like she's really telling this story of like I am emotional. I grew up being emotional. I grew up listening to emotional artists, and now I'm an emotional person. And I feel like that's how most of us are. And we don't fit cleanly into these like lines and don't have whatever our normal reactions to things that you might have experienced in your life because we didn't have the same experience that like you had. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to say that. Um, but I think that starting the conversation with Will Smith and with Will Smith doing a normal thing in society is important.